Hello, my name is Robin Wintage, and I want to share with you a little bit of my story and my spiritual journey today. It's not an easy story to hear, but I want you to stick with me because God shows up in some really amazing ways, and I don't want you to miss that. My story began before I was even born. When my mom found out that she was pregnant with me, my father decided that he was too young to be a dad, and so she became a single mom. We lived with her parents, my grandparents. My grandfather was a lot of things. He was a husband. He was a father of 3 children. He was a hard worker. He was a Sunday school teacher. And I loved spending time with him. I remember singing silly songs in the car. He took me out for ice cream. He took me to church and Sunday school every week. I really loved him. But that's not all he was. He was an abuser. He was a predator. As far back as I have memories, he was sexually abusing me. Not only that, but he was selling me to his friends and the neighbors, people in the community, and even people in his church. As you might imagine, that really messed up my perception of who God is. In fact, the earliest memories that I have in church were of abuse happening there. I remember looking through this beautiful stained glass window, wondering why God wasn't present in his own house. It made sense to me, even as a child, that if he were here, this wouldn't be happening. I really believed that I was alone, that no one was coming to save me, and if anybody was going to help me, it better be me. I better learn how to take care of myself. I believed that God was real and that he was out there somewhere doing God stuff, but that he was just way too busy to be concerned about what was happening to me. Fortunately for me, our brains are wired to help us survive abuse and trauma, and I was able to tuck that abuse away in a place in my brain where I didn't have to feel it. In fact, I learned that it was really better just to let things happen, not feel any of it. I learned how to check out and just be numb, a skill that I carried well into my adult life. I didn't feel pain or anger or sadness, but I didn't feel any of the good things either, like joy or excitement or intimacy. It was just easier. Even though I was able to tuck that stuff away in a place in my brain where I didn't have to think about it, what I didn't understand was that I carried its effects with me. I married young at 17, and a few months later, we had our first child. I finished college. We started a business together, my husband and I. And by the time I was 30, we had 2 more kids. And I carried all that pain from my childhood right into my parenting and right into my marriage. In fact, to deal with life, I just became this kind of closed up, walled off person. Don't let anybody get too close because that's going to hurt. That is a really great philosophy for parenting and marriage, by the way. In my efforts to insulate myself from feeling pain, I actually isolated myself from the very connections that could have helped me heal. Whenever something painful happened in life, I just pretended like it wasn't happening and I stuffed it away in that little place in my brain. Truthfully, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just how I survived. And then in my mid-30s, I became really depressed, and I couldn't figure out why. I was in a safe place, good husband, 3 great kids, we had a thriving business. I should have been really happy. But in the middle of all that good stuff, I was in a really dark place. Picture it like this. It's like that one closet that you have in your house where you stuff everything when company comes over. At least I have that closet in my house. You open the door and you shove stuff in and you close it really fast because you don't want it all to fall down on your head. And then pretty soon you have to lean on the door to get it to latch. And then stuff starts oozing out around the sides and under the bottom. That closet was how my life was functioning. All that pain from my childhood that I had chosen not to deal with was oozing from my past into my present, and I didn't know what to do with it. I carried really deep sadness, overwhelming grief, and lots of hidden anger. One beautiful fall day, I found myself driving around in my minivan, wondering if I could drive it off the road and end my life and make it look like an accident. That day, I pulled over to the side of the road, and I just started to cry. And it was like everything in that closet just came dumping out on my head. I just sobbed. I was so desperate. And in the middle of that desperate place, I heard God speak to me. He said, I don't want you to live this way. Call David. Well, David was a former pastor and a family counselor, and right away I started to argue with God and tell him why that was a really bad idea. I thought that David would think I was crazy. I didn't want him to know how bad I was doing, and I hadn't even talked to him for 10 years. But I just kept hearing it. Call David. So I did. And guess what? David wasn't shocked or surprised. I think he actually chuckled. He didn't think I was crazy. At least he didn't tell me if he did. We made an appointment for counseling and prayer. That simple phone call was the first step on an incredible journey of healing and restoration for me. But I want you to notice something with me, and this is the really good news. When I made a move toward healing in obedience, God did not overwhelm me with a to-do list. He did not make me feel guilty for all the bad decisions that I'd made. He didn't shame me because I couldn't figure this out on my own because I wasn't enough. He just said, do this one next thing, and it will bring healing into your life. It might be hard to understand how a small step in front of you, your one next thing, can lead to healing. But doing that thing, whatever it is, says to God that we believe He's going to do something in response. It says that we believe Jesus is able to take our messy, crappy life and do something really beautiful with it. That's what redemption is. You have no idea the chain of events that could be set in motion by taking that one step that God puts in front of you today. That day in my car, if I'd heard God say, call David, make an appointment, keep the appointment, then make about 100 more appointments, then we're going to pull out that stuff from your childhood, and I want you to feel it. We're going to process it. Then I want you to forgive the people that hurt you. Then I'm going to ask you to forgive your grandfather. And then I want you to talk about it publicly. I'm pretty sure I would have said, no thanks, nada, yet not happening, not this girl. But that is not what God did. He simply said, call David. He knows when we're barely hanging on, and He wants to help us, not just dump a to-do list on us. Responding by doing that one next thing brings us one step closer to finding redemption and restoration. I really wish I could tell you that life was sunshine, lollipops, and unicorns pooping out rainbows after that, but it wasn't. Working through my brokenness took a long-term commitment to wanting to know the truth about who I am and about who God is. Some days and some sessions were really hard. I struggled with the belief that God had abandoned me in some really dark places, and I was really angry. For a long time, I believed that the things that happened to me defined who I was, that I was broken, bad, weak, or that somehow it was my fault. I spent a lot of time and energy trying to manage the symptoms of who I believed I was. It's what we do. We eat, we sleep, we shop, we use drugs or alcohol or pornography. We jump from relationship to relationship, from church to church, from job to job, all trying to make ourselves feel better, trying to relieve the pain and fill up the emptiness. But that stuff never works for very long, because only one thing can. We need the true healing and restoration that Jesus offers. I believe that God doesn't want to just help us manage the symptoms of our pain. I believe that He wants to heal us at the very point of our loss and brokenness, at the time when we were hurt the deepest, at the place of our abuse and abandonment. Managing symptoms is a whole lot of work. True healing brings freedom and allows redemption to begin. I know because I'm experiencing it. God has been at work resurrecting things in me that were dead. I feel things again. He's been rebuilding what was broken, restoring what was taken, and redeeming the pain of all of that. I have good, healthy relationships with boundaries to protect me instead of walls. I have conversations with people when I'm upset instead of hiding. I've learned how to give and receive affection from my kids. And I enjoy my marriage. At one point, my husband said to me, "If you don't get some help, we're not going to be married in 5 years." In June, we celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. That's the kind of redemption I'm talking about. That's what Jesus offers. God doesn't only redeem relationships and conversations and marriages. He redeems places too. One of the places that my grandfather sold me was the parking lot of a paper factory in Mason, Ohio. This paper factory. That parking lot, the place where I come and worship every week. Sometimes I can hardly even wrap my head around a God who is so good and so faithful that He arranges people and places and finances so that this place where I was abused could be a church, could be my church, that I'd be standing on this platform, having a voice in a place where my voice was taken. What kind of God does that for us? One who is the ultimate Redeemer. Lamentations 3 says it like this: I called on your name, O Lord, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. You came near when I called you, and you whispered, don't fear. Oh Lord, you took up my case. You redeemed my life. God is redeeming my life. I don't know what your journey has been, what kind of pain you carry, but I do know this. God is at work right now on your behalf, arranging circumstances and people and places in ways that you can't even comprehend or imagine, so that you can be free. He wants to take the broken, messed up stuff in your life, make it whole. He wants to redeem the places that you think aren't redeemable. I don't know what your one next thing is. Maybe you need to call someone, tell them how you're really doing. Maybe you need to make an appointment for counseling or prayer like I did. Maybe you need to forgive someone. Maybe you need to begin a relationship with the God who sees you and fights for you and has designed you for a life of meaning and purpose. Whatever it is, I just want to encourage you in that. Be brave. Don't fear. The Lord will take up your case. The Lord can, will, and wants to redeem your life. So do your one next thing and just sit back and watch how God responds to that. It could be your first step toward real freedom. I'm so glad that you stuck with me and listened, and you were part of my one next thing. Thank you.